guys, welcome back to another edition of Chats from the Blog Cabin. Today I'm joined by Allie. She is a mom, but she has an amazing app that she created out of COVID. But Allie, first tell us about yourself.
I have a very, I would say, diverse background, kind of a bit unusual. I am what I don't know, most people would call like a Renaissance person. I get bored easily. So throughout my life, I have studied and worked and developed many different things in arts and sciences and business and software development. But I actually have done it all, but it's kind of hard to believe. I will say that I'm always doing something and I'm always learning something. Yeah.
So you're never too old to learn new things, right?
No, I am always taking one or two classes, pretty much at all times. Probably taking a class and then practicing and learning some other thing. I'm originally from Argentina. I came to the States a little bit over 25 years ago and decided to keep my accent. I always have been moving inside Argentina to different places and always having an accent even within Argentina. Mm-hmm. And that used to be an issue for me as a kid. And I decided to own it and just to, have it. English is my fourth language. I don't practice the other ones a lot, so you cannot forget about them. And I'm pretty I learn languages pretty easily, so I have learned languages to speak in different countries and also programming languages. And I came to the States and worked a lot in web and in TV networks, doing video games for Cartoon Network, creating all of those logo animations for MTV and VH1 and Nickelodeon, launching channels for other countries, which was an amazing experience to do, and getting users to get them to know the channels and bringing in viewers. And then my husband's assistant she had to leave all of a sudden when I was living in Miami, and I was painting at the time a lot. And she left all of a sudden, and he was going on a speaking tour, and that was my introduction to real life business school. And I went in for a decade. We grew the business something like, I don't remember if it's 8,000% or 10,000% or more than that, but we've been making it 6 times in a row, the fastest growing companies in America list. And we keep doing it. And by now I'm own multiple businesses, a video production business, entrepreneurs business, a bookkeeping business, the art business that I'm now starting on my own, and it's been basically a big adventure, all of it. I have a team for the businesses, so I keep replacing myself, and I have become pretty good at doing that, at getting to find people that are way better than me at doing things. So then I get replaced. I'm just getting replaced out of the software company. And since then I had a baby and that completely changed my life. Like probably most moms, the experience that they have. And until he was 2, he was just the perfect baby, other than not sleeping. Everything else he was happy. It was just amazing experience. And then when he turned 3, some people call that age at the teenagers, and he started going into these crying like meltdowns. Like I would say no to something and he would start crying, but then he wouldn't just stop after a couple of minutes. He would keep crying and it will go in crescendo, but he couldn't stop himself. So I gave him the words to say, like, help me stop crying, which he started using. And I will try to help him stop crying, but nothing really worked on a consistent basis. I asked the teachers, I asked friends, I asked psychologists, and they gave me different redirection techniques, and I tried them all. I read books, and it just wouldn't work. I couldn't snap him out of that kind of lizard brain. That's how they call it, like when they are not really thinking. And I couldn't do it. And one day, out of like just full desperation, I suddenly thought, I'm gonna use my MTV skills of getting your attention with a headline. And I asked him a question, and I asked him, have I ever told you about the frog with the one eye? Which for a 3-year-old boy, especially surrounded by nature, a frog with one eye is something very, very, very interesting. So he stopped crying all of a sudden, and I said, okay, this is good. This is something good. I actually snapped him out of it. So then I started improvising a story about the frog with the one eye, and he actually listened, and then in a few minutes he was laughing and completely out of it. So that I started using that, and just, like you do, some people do improv comedy. I do improv storytelling. I come up with the stories on the fly. I pull them out of I don't know where, and they just come. And since I've been drawing cartoons for a really long time, I have a cast of characters. So I draw from those characters, and it works. When the first 3 months of doing this, I'm not kidding when I say this, I created between 3 to 11 stories a day.
Wow.
Yes. And then something shifted in my son's brain that he stopped completely with the meltdowns, like those crying and like not being able to get hold of himself. That just stopped. And he will just will not go into it. If he saw it coming, he would just ask me for a story to make him feel better. And he wanted to feel better. And then it became maybe 3 a day, then 1 in the morning and 1 at night. And sometimes we had sessions of, became like our together time. When he would wake up in the morning, he would have a bottle, and then we would do a story. And then at night, going to bed, he would have a bottle, and then we will do a story. And at the very beginning, my husband, we were in a hotel, and I saw that one of these meltdowns was coming. So I thought, okay, I'm gonna start a story right now. And there were people around. There were servers from the restaurant in the hotel. There was no COVID by then. There were people sitting next to us. And I started to pull off a story, and it was the first time that my husband heard that story. And the people started to listen in. And then the staff from the hotel, they stopped and to listen in. And then one of the women said, I want to stay and know how the story ends with this giraffe, but like, I gotta keep working, but like, can you tell me later? And then my husband said, you gotta start recording these things. So I thought, okay, I hadn't thought about recording the stories, but then I started recording them on my phone, and I have by now somewhere over 800 recordings of stories, and I will say a good close to 400 of these stories that I came up with. That I thought, okay, I have a lot of stories. Some of them are pretty good, because not everything can be really good. And it would be nice to start sharing it with other parents, because somebody else is going through this. If they are not having like the issue of that he can't stop crying, there are crying kids that need to be snapped out of the lizard brain, and like for somebody, for some parents, these stories could help. And since I have the recordings of it, I started editing them in my iPad, and then I made an app that now is available for free. I brought it out in the middle of the pandemic, so I made it free for everybody because people are losing their jobs. Like everything was during the quarantine was, I mean, pretty bad, and I thought, this could help someone.
Now we have a question. Somebody said, what multiple stories a day? So I want to know about multiple stories about you sharing multiple stories a day with your son.
He would ask me for them. I would, at the very beginning, during those first 3 months, he was something hadn't shifted yet on his brain, so he will go into these crying meltdowns, but then he couldn't come out of it. He could say, help me stop crying, which it then became, tell me a story. So anytime that this will happen, I would start a story, and I will ask him. I will sometimes start with a question, and sometimes I will just start with the story, just right there. And in a lot of the recordings, I took them out, but from the beginning, like the first maybe 3-4 months, the recordings do start with him crying. And you can't hear that. Like, it's horrible. Like I tried editing a few, and I made a couple of people listen to it, and they said, no, you can't have these stories with crying like that. But it's basically a different type of redirection. It's kind of I call it converting the anxiety into curiosity. Like, if I could get him curious, when you are curious, you can't be anything else. You cannot be angry, you cannot have fear, you cannot have anxiety, you cannot have any bad feelings when you are curious. When you are in that curiosity state. So all of the stories get you from the beginning into that curious state, and then the kids are open and listen and calm down.
Okay, we also have another comment. It says, love it, especially to redirect a child who can't verbalize their angst and emotion. Definitely going to check it out. So that's good for kids that can't verbalize what they're feeling at the moment. I love that.
Absolutely. I had several comments from different parents groups with kids with sensory. I don't know if they're called disorders, but they can't process the information the same as other kids. And it really snaps them out of it and helps them to calm down. A parent posted that it used to take her over 2 hours every night to get her kid to sleep. And with the stories, less than 15 minutes and the kid is out. And it's that kind of effect of curiosity. They stop, then they calm down, and then my son goes to sleep. And I'm still creating the stories. We have maybe now, I would say 3 or 4 a week, depending on the week. Sometimes it's 1 a day, and sometimes it's around 4 a week, new ones that I keep creating, always with the same cast of characters. Yeah.
So how much time does it take you to create a story?
As long as I tell it. These are oral tales. So it takes, I create it on the fly. So however long the story is, that's what it takes to create it.
And so what are the ages for the kids for the app?
I was surprised, but they are from 3 to about 9. I was surprised about the 8 and 9-year-olds because I have multiple boys, 8-year-olds, that they listen to them, and the parents, for example, one of them, they wrote me to say that their son stopped sleeping with them. Like he could go to sleep in his own bed, and then they will put the story on the phone. And since it's not, it doesn't have screen time. Basically, the story starts playing and it's audio, so the kid just relaxes and listens. So the kid started to go to sleep and relax, and then fall asleep and stay in his own bed all the time, like the whole night.
So have you heard stories from people that there was like one character that they love the most out of all the stories, or is it the whole cast of characters that they love?
I would say probably Minicat Minicat and Mini Dog. Those two, they appear a lot because Minicat, she's the only one that is still alive, because these are all my pets throughout my life. Mm-hmm. And Minicat is the only one. She's almost 15 now, and she's still alive, and she has a relationship with her tail. It's Minicat and her tail, and the tail is a character. And she appears a lot. She's extremely cranky and a really good baker. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Extremely cranky and a good baker at the same time. That's something you will see in cats.
Yeah. The most surprising thing was that the parents themselves are also using the stories to calm down. Like there are a few people that they use the app to calm down themselves as stories for their own. And one thing that I started doing when I was when I started editing them to put them in the app, I started composing music, which I had never done before. I'm not really musical either, but the magic of my iPad allows me to create music, and I'm not that bad. So a few parents asked me about the music of the stories, and I said, "Oh, I make it. It's sort of like a sound, like a score for the stories that it kind of gets you even more into the story." And so I decided to make a section for just the music. And now I believe that almost an album. Yeah, it's been super fun. I'm really enjoying creating the music for them. And sometimes I just sit and I just create music.
So do you think you'll turn it into an album that you put on Amazon or something like that, or sell through the app?
If people like it, yes. At the moment, I'm just enjoying creating the music and kind of getting to know that part of myself. For me, as an artist, to tell so many stories and to create them constantly on the fly, it really surprises me at times what is inside of me. What are all of these places where we go, and all of these things that happen in the stories that are very, I would call them imaginative, and that my son keeps being interested in them. And his friends also keep being interested in those, because I get to tell them when they have a sleepover, or when we are trying to calm them down after screaming around the house for maybe 20 minutes, and it's time to start, getting them more calm. Then I start with a story, and they listen and they relax, and I find that the most surprising thing of all. I had never done that in my life before. I had always worked with animation, and it had been always on the screen, but it hadn't been storytelling what did it. Yeah.
So you said you speak 4 languages. So are you planning on is this app available in other languages or just English at the moment?
No, it's just English. Is at the moment the language that I speak the most, and I think and create and write in English. What the app is being used for in other countries, which really surprised me, and I asked a mom, why they were listening to it in India so much, and and in Latin America, and it's because it helps them, it helps their kids practice their English. Even though I speak with an accent, they use it for that. I guess I speak slow and they understand it, and it's very calm, and they use it a lot for that.
See, that's another function that you didn't realize when you were creating an app, that it was going to be used for English as well.
Yes, I did not think about it at all, and it's all the vocabulary, the adventures. They are all things related to kids, because that's what my son understands, and they are all things that kids are interested in. From rainbows, I have snails, worms, peacocks, iguanas. There are all of the stories happen in a farm, and it's a house, my artist studio, and then there are different trees where different animals live, and there is the frog with the one eye that has a lab underground. We go there a lot, and she's building a spaceship, and it's all of the imaginary is all things that kids relate to, and they already sort of know the words. So it really helps them. They don't have to think about what I'm saying, because they know already that.
So do you think you'll end up writing books based on these stories? Do you think you'll release them as books?
Yes. This year during the pandemic, what I was doing was taking writing courses, and I was first thinking, these are oral stories, don't really work as, if you read the transcripts, they don't really work for as written stories. They work as a tale, as something that you can tell each other. But when you start writing, it's different. There is, when you're speaking, there is an intonation, there is a pace to it, there is a timing to it. And I also use a lot of humor in the stories. They are very funny. We laugh a lot in the stories with my son, because he participates a lot. And the transcripts are parts, there are conversations. So I was thinking first in working with a writer, like partnering to do it. But then when I was doing these courses, I realized maybe I could do this. And I'm pretty good at writing short things, like a headline, but writing like a book, I was very slow. So I took multiple courses, and one of the courses was about fast drafting and writing really fast. And I'm doing it. I'm doing it. I did 5 stories, and I'm working now with a book editor, because I do write with English as a second language. It's not your regular grammar, and the stories are not regular stories either. So we're working to make them work as books, because I would love to have books also. I don't think that should be lost at all from in today's world. I think that I used to read a lot when I was a kid. I own a lot of books. Now, as a grown-up, I more listen to books more than reading them. But I think that it's very important for kids to actually read, and to have a physical book and read and see the illustrations, and the characters more come to life. They are not, I have to get them out of my head and show them so they come into the world also. So it's been an experience. I'm at the very beginning of that, and 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 I got fast at writing. I love it. I actually love it. I didn't think that I was gonna like the writing, but it's a super fun process of doing that.
I love
Yeah.
that.
Mm-hmm.
Do you
You write it too, right?
Yes, I do. Now, do you think that you will take it, since you have the background in animation, take it and make it a cartoon and try to sell it to some other like Cartoon Network or Nickelodeon or anything like that?
I would say not at the moment. I think that I don't know. I think that in the future, possibly, what is coming more close that I more feel like doing are, and I started creating, because this is what I used to do at Cartoon, is creating games based on the stories. They are also not regular games, and they are very much part of the stories. And I think that they teach something different than the stories, what the stories can do to the imagination. For me, I would say the most important thing for the stories is how it opens up my son's imagination. He started right now from the experience of listening to all of these stories. He not only creates his own stories, which I also edit and put in the app, he thinks in with options. He finds solutions. He doesn't. He thinks things all the way through. Kind of what happened. The same thing that happens in the stories. It is. I can see his imagination flourishing, and I think that right now in I don't even see this. My son goes to a Montessori school, and in the school system, in the regular school system, I know that there is pretty much nothing related to art, pretty much nothing related to writing. There is nothing that will nurture the imagination, the creativity of the kids, that they have a lot, and they don't really know what to do with it, because I grew up as an artist, and my mom didn't know what to do with me as an artist. But most parents don't know what to do with kids that are artists. And it's such a good way to learn and to explore and to become adults. And I don't see that in the school system at all, not even in the Montessori school that my son goes to, which I find to be a really good system for learning. They it's more science. There are no arts pretty much. And before COVID, I would go and do once every couple months some sort of activity that was related to opening up their creativity and imagination. And I was the only parent doing that. And that was the only time when the kids will get to do that, expressing themselves, but also using their creativity and exploring it and seeing, what comes out and what's inside of them. And I find that the stories work really well for that. And I think it's something that is needed. Like we all send, before COVID, we will send the kids to different art camp and art classes and music lessons and all of these after school activities. And these stories, they help with that all the time. And it sort of becomes part of them.
I love the fact that you using it to help your son become more creative. Does he help you with any of the stories? Like you're at a stopping point and you don't know where to go. Does he make suggestions as you're telling the story, or does he just listen?
He participates constantly. Depending on when we did the story and depending how awake or not he is, because we have 2 times to tell the stories now, is bedtime, where sometimes I get to finish the story and sometimes I don't because he falls asleep. And then in the morning when he wakes up, and in those he's much more up, right? But he has he participates a lot on asking questions about the stories and about what happened with the characters, then asking, and what if this other thing happened, and what if, like he started using what if a lot, which is fantastic. Like that is the basis of being open-minded, right? And being open to learn anything or explore any possibility, which is the basis of creativity. The what if is extremely important. So he uses that what if a lot, which makes the other kids also use it too, because when the moment that they hear my son in the story asking a question, then they start asking a question, and then you gotta stop the story, and then you have the dialogue, and then we keep going. And my son if he's awake, he's constantly talking and asking questions. And there is a period of stories where he discovered that I will change the story if he asks me to. So, for example, we are the day, I don't know, the day was a very sunny day. And then suddenly he says, no, it was very cold and gray. So then, okay, the story changes to it's a cold and gray day and the things that happen in a cold and gray day, and which is very different. And the story starts taking turns because he decides that now we're changing it. So I change it. Yeah.
I love that. So people can hear your son's voice on the app and hear you telling the story as well. That is so cool.
Yeah. And also the stories that he tells. Because he also, I record when he tells me stories. And there is, for example, I released recently 6 stories that we did one night. That it was a very long night. He would not fall asleep that day. And I told him 3 full stories, and then he told me full 3 stories in that recording. Like I had to cut it a lot to be able to put it even in the editing software, because it wouldn't fit. It was too long. It was, I don't know, like an hour and a half. And I record his stories too, and then I edit them, and then he has his own section. And the kids love it. They love to hear another kid in the stories. It's I love it too. I love his stuff. Yeah.
I love that. So it's getting him involved in helping other children and seeing the difference and being creative. So take us through how you record your stories. Do you, when you lay down in bed, or when you're putting your son down to bed at night, you just turn the recorder on and just record?
Yeah, in my phone. I put it in airplane mode, and then I start recording, and then I turn it off when we are completely done. And I keep the phone. At the beginning, he didn't like that I was recording, but then he kind of got used to it. And now it's sort of part of being there. I just keep it close to me, like I talk to it, and then when he talks, I put it to him and he talks to it, and sometimes he grabs it and starts talking to the phone. And that also created, he has his iPad and he records himself in his iPad all the time. He knows how to go to the app, and then he likes to sing and like rap a lot. So he makes his songs. He's been exploring a little bit now with GarageBand to make music. But he records himself a lot. So because he knows how I do it, right? So that's it. I just use the microphone of the cell phone, and then I put them in iCloud, and then from my iPad, I open them, and then I start cutting down. There are spaces, there are parts where it doesn't make sense to keep them. Like if we go really off the rails with what we're talking about, or maybe the story doesn't end, I take some of that out, and then I start laying the music. By now, I can see the sound wave visually on the program, on the editing program, and I start already laying down music, because I can tell if we're laughing, if he fell asleep, or if he's quiet. So I start putting a mood to the story, and I already edit with some music under.
So when you're recording and he falls asleep, do you continue recording and finishing the story, or do you just stop?
Most of the time I stop. Sometimes it depends on what happens and where I'm in the story. I like to create the stories with an audience, right? Like live. I'm kind of used to that. And I think that if he falls asleep, then other kids are gonna fall asleep too. And that's kind of part of the countdown stories. So sometimes I ended where I ended, and I record his snores a lot. So you can hear him like sleeping, and then it ends. And sometimes I keep the story going in the next day, like in the next recording, and those I put together. There are two stories where my son mainly likes to tell him new stories, like he's a story snob basically. But sometimes he does accept to listen to a recorded story. And the funny thing is that he falls asleep in the same place where he fell asleep originally. And that is one story that happened twice with that story, and then also happened twice with another story where it's a very funny one, and he starts laughing at the exact same moment as the recording, in the exact same way. And you listen and we laugh, like it's hilarious how that happens, but it's the exact same way. And I wonder, like, do other kids fall asleep in the same place, or do they laugh like that in the same place? In months apart, and the same thing happens.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't know why, but I kind of since the stories are real life, they are made up live. I kind of respect that. If it happened like that, then for other kids it will happen the same way, and they will fall asleep at the same time when my son fell asleep. And I kind of I tend to leave it like that. And then at some point I will grab the story and finish it, or start it over and then finish it, and things like that. I don't know. I like it. I think that they are a piece of real life, and I like to respect that.
So how long are the stories on the apps?
They go anywhere from, the shortest one that I have edited so far is about 5 minutes, but the average is 10 minutes. There are some that are longer, some that are, one of my favorite is close, I think it's like 25 minutes. But there are multiple stories in that one. The characters start doing something else, and then a different sort of story comes up, and then we go back to the main story. Some are long like that, but I didn't find like a problem. I only heard of a couple of kids that they will choose the stories depending on how long they were. And I'm not totally sure if the parents are doing that. I kind of like to go by the title and like what I see, and like, oh, okay, let's listen today about penguins, or let's listen about butterflies, or let's listen about, frogs. And because each of them have a very specific character, more that.
So when they're playing on the app, if they haven't fallen asleep, will it just go to the next story and play the next story, or do they have to click on another story?
No, it will just play in the next story. Mm-hmm. They can also create their own playlist with like their favorites, what they like, and I kind of choose if my son wants a recorded story, then I kind of choose, like I read the names to him and then we choose based on that. And then most of the time he falls asleep when we're doing that at night.
So which does he prefer? Does he prefer the recorded stories or the live stories with you?
The live stories. Yeah, but he knows who to ask. If he asks, for example, my husband or his nanny or like anybody, he asks them to read him a story or to tell him a story, like a traditional story, more like a fairy tale story. But if it's me, he knows that I can make new stories, so he prefers new stories. 99% of the time, he prefers new stories. And sometimes I am pretty tired, and I would prefer if I didn't have to come up with a story at that moment. But then I just do. Yeah.
So that brings me to the next question. Your story ideas. Obviously, you just said you get very tired making up these stories, and it takes a lot of brain power to be creative. So where do you get your ideas for your stories?
I think my subconscious. I can step in there and just pull, and I never know where the story is gonna take me. I I surprise myself on what happens. Sometimes I'm super tired and I start telling him the story, and then this idea just pops out of nowhere. It's like if I can get the story started, then the ideas start coming. Like there is like a cue, and like in my head, it's just the next sentence is waiting of what I'm gonna say, but I never know what is it. Like I'm not trying to take the story anywhere. I'm just going to what the next sentence is, and then I do the next sentence, and I also see how he reacts to it. And sometimes I start laughing because I try to make them funny and playful, and then we have a moment of laugh, and then at one point he starts calming down and falling asleep.
I just love that.
And he tells me sometimes I stop, and then he's not moving, but then he says, keep telling me the story, like half asleep. And he tells me, he keeps repeating me, and he tells me this also, like during the day, that if I think he fell asleep, like even keep telling me the story even if I'm asleep, he tells me. And so when he started saying that, I started, I keep telling the story even though my audience fell asleep. I do it for a while longer and see, okay, I'm going to try to finish it. If it's appropriate for the moment in the story, I try to finish it and I finish it. But it depends. It depends on how far in the story I'm in. Yeah. And then I have no idea what I said. Like I'm very glad I'm recording them because then I have them transcribed, and then I read what I said. I'm like, how did that happen? But yeah, but because it's a lot of them, you know?
So right now your app is free. Do you ever think of making it like in purchase things, in-app purchases, or do you think that it'll continue to stay free? Because obviously you have to make some money somehow.
Yeah, Apple is making me do it. I would rather not to, but they are actually obligating me to have features and to have people pay for it, which I didn't expect that because Google Play is not like that. But I'm gonna have a way. I figured out a way where the stories can be free, and they are. What I'm thinking more in charging is gonna be possibly the storybooks, possibly activities, something that is coming up that I've been planning in doing is sending basically a little book, companion book that is not you don't read it, but you can look at it while the stories are happening. Mm-hmm. And that possibly will be the way. Normally, the way that we kind of start everything is, let's put it out there, and then we figure out what exactly we are doing and how exactly it makes money. Because in all of the businesses that I have started over the years, you really don't know what you are selling for the first several years. Mm-hmm. Until you figure out what exactly you're doing. Even though you start with a business plan, even though you think, okay, this way or the other way, you still, in reality, you don't know what exactly what you are selling. And I just decided to go into this like that. Let's put it out there. Let's see if people like them and if it helps people. And then let's see what works to make money. At the moment, I don't need to make money from that. It's more of a passion project. Mm-hmm. And I decided to take it slow and see where it takes me.
So where can you find your app?
Say that again.
Where can you find your apps at?
Oh, you can find it in the in my website from aleloop.com or calmdownstories.com. And also in the App Store or in Google Play, searching for Calm Down Stories. Mm-hmm.
So is there anything else you want to share with us before we leave?
I want to thank you for having me here. I really enjoy having our conversation. What I would like to tell other parents is that it is how important it is to take the time to give the space to the kids to develop that creativity and that imagination. It is not the world we live today, the education system, it is not taking care of that. And you can see the difference on kids that do have that outlet and do have that imagination in how it shows in language, in how they play, in how they learn, in everything they do. And I think it's going to make a big impact as adults. And one of the stories that I put online a couple of weeks ago in the app, for example, it helped teach my son criteria on how to make decisions, because we are talking and we start discussing in the story on how this character is making decisions, how this mini cat is choosing to do this or the other, and also a really big, fat, bad orange cat that is in many of the stories. And that is the kind of conversations that you want your kid to start having with you, that opens their minds and helps them make decisions. And the schools don't teach that. And that is something that I think that the stories have, that the app has, that is very necessary for our kids. And that I think that makes a big change, and a big change in a big way to help raise these kids, that it takes a village, mm-hmm. to raise them.
That is so true. And I want to thank you so much, Ali, for coming on today and chatting with us about Calm Down Stories.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
So, guys, we will see you on the next chat from the Log Cabin. Bye.
Bye-bye.